Hi, I'm Khalila McCoy, and this is the show that makes space for real stories. This is Where We Rise. Hi, everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining me for week 3 of this new podcast. I'm so grateful you're here. Thank you for tuning in, for sharing episodes with friends and family, for reposting things on Instagram, and for all the positive feedback you've been sending my way. I really do appreciate every ounce of it. If you haven't already, please take a moment to leave a review on whatever platform you're listening on. This will help others find the show, and I'd love to give you a shout out on future episodes. Today, we are talking to Buneka, and I had the joy of getting to know her years ago when her son was in my 4th grade class. For reference, he's now in college, and I can't believe it. But one of my favorite things about being a teacher isn't just building relationships with my students, it's building relationships with their families. It means the world to me when a child leaves my classroom and the family chooses to still stay in touch and we get to know each other beyond the classroom. That's what happened with Buneka. Buneka would sometimes share little pieces of her life with me, and one of those things being that she was adopted. Then, when her son left my classroom, we became friends on Facebook, and there I learned about her heart for supporting children in foster care. When I invited her to be on the show, I thought we'd have a simple conversation about adoption and her passion for helping children who were still waiting for families. But, as we are learning together through this podcast, when you take time to truly listen to someone's life, there is no such thing as a simple story. Buneka's story and the message that comes from it are ones I hope you truly take time to reflect on. Let's listen. All right. Hi, Buneka. How are you today?
Hi, Khalila. I'm great. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. Thank you for coming on the show and taking the time to share your story. When I asked you to be on the show, you gave me a few bullet points of what your experience in the foster care system was like and a little bit about what it was like when you were adopted. So I'm just full of many questions and I'm excited to hear your full story. So, if you're ready, we can just jump on in.
Yeah.
Like I said, I know you were adopted. You were adopted in your teenage years. So share what your life was like as a child before you got adopted.
I think what has really astonished me, not only how my life was as a child, but obviously I was adopted 34 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And when I talked to my friend Molly Rant Thomas, she would say to me, Buneka, your story is still relevant. Kids are
Mm-hmm.
still going through the same exact things you went through 34 years ago. And I was just really amazed by that. And I think that's what turned everything into a passion for me to be a voice to some of these teens, mostly now. I feel like they go through a hard time, but then also even our younger kids, because of the drug pandemic and how it's
Mm-hmm.
come through and taken out a lot of families. So my childhood story started with a teenage mom. She was 16 when she got pregnant with me, and we basically did like kinship, which where family takes care of the kids um,
Okay.
to keep them out of foster care. And then my mom got pregnant again when I was 4. And because she had a lack of prenatal care, she was unkept and then on drugs, like drug positive. And then I was also unkept when I came into the hospital to visit with my sister when she was born. That immediately started our case with Franklin County Children's Services. At that point, my sister and I went to different people in our family, but actually different people we were living with prior to my sister being born. And that kind of started our journey in foster care. And at the time, Franklin County Children's Services believed to keep the family together at all costs. And
Mm-hmm.
their idea behind that was that the abuse that you experience by your own family is less traumatic than the abuse you might experience at a stranger's hand. And
Wow.
so, yeah, so they would try everything they could to keep a family together, get the parents in parenting classes, get them in drug rehab, get them set up with support services outside in the community. Um, and then they're just, some people that can't do that. So My case lasted 10 years because they were trying to keep the family together. They kept giving her an opportunity to have us, and then she would lose us. She'd go through all the parenting classes again, and then we'd go back to live with her, and we'd end up back in the system.
Mm-hmm.
Nowadays, though, they have changed it to for every child for every reason. And so each child's case is handled separate and individually based on their needs. And they try to keep a child in a foster home less than 2 years because of bonding,
Mm-hmm.
and then they try to get them adopted as soon as possible so that they can have a childhood.
So when you said for the 10 years you were with different family members, but then you would go back with your mom, do you
Hmm.
remember, because you were pretty young when, like you said, when your sister was born and things like that, do you remember feeling like this is not right or this is not how it's supposed to be? Or were you just like, oh yeah, I get to go stay with this family member for a while?
Oh no, it was terrifying.
Okay.
Yes. I just feel like at the different times that I went, even when I lived with family members, it really wasn't the best scenario or the best situation.
Mm-hmm.
And I was basically, as soon as my sister was born, I took on responsibility for her. So at 4 years old, I was making her bottles and changing her diaper and taking
Mm-hmm.
care of her. And so I basically raised her. And then my mom had another son, had another boy, and then I just started in on raising him. And I would take care of my mom, I would take care of the kids, and then she had another child. And the last child, he was born when I was in fifth grade,
Okay.
and we lived in a foster home at the time. But again, we got to like that 2 year mark, and they try to move you because of bonding, and so they moved us back with my mom. And so basically, I raised my youngest brother until they finally did like a plea bargain with her. Like, if you give up these three, you can keep the last one. And so she decided to give us up for adoption and keep my youngest brother.
Wow.
But I almost dropped out of high school or like middle school because I wanted to make sure he was safe and that my siblings were safe. So it was really a blessing that I got to leave her home. I left her home and went into a foster care again, foster home for another 2 years before I got adopted.
So every home that you were in wasn't necessarily family, right?
Correct. So it was
Okay.
10 homes in 10 years. And some were emergency placements where you might get picked up in the middle of the night and they just immediately put you into a family, and you can only stay there for 3 months. And
Hmm.
in the meantime, they're trying to find you somebody. So I lived in a couple of homes like that just for like the 3 month period, all the while missing school. And, at one point I had to be taxi cab to a school so they wouldn't have to change me to like my fourth school in that year. So many times I would learn one set of curriculum, like a scheduled curriculum at one
Mm-hmm.
school, and then move, and I would repeat that same curriculum but miss the whole other half of the curriculum
Right. Oh my
because they run a
goodness.
different schedule. So it was a lot of it was a lot of catching up once I was finally adopted and settled.
Yeah. When you were moving around, did your siblings come with you every single time, or you could be moved by yourself?
So most of the homes, especially if it's an emergency placement, we were all placed into different homes. And
Okay.
then when we did a kinship, they would try to put us all together. So a kinship
Mm-hmm.
meaning with like my great aunt or with my grandmother, or even obviously with my mother. And then it just all depend on the foster home. So one foster home did take all three of us, so we could all be together, which
Okay.
was it was incredible, but they also were very abusive. And so
Mm.
I think I spent a lot of time trying to protect them, protect my siblings from the abuse. And um, that home, uh, we ended up later, years later, I would do, I guess, teachings at Franklin County Children's Services, I guess, like for the people who are going to adopt, and let them know what it was like to be a foster child, what it was like to be adopted, things they
Mm-hmm.
might want to know, what these kids are going through, what they're thinking of, and that kind of thing. And they ended up doing, Channel 6 ended up doing a case on abuse in foster care. And we actually went back to that family and talked with them. They weren't very happy, but it does happen. There is a lot of unfortunate abuse that happens in these homes. And so I spent a lot of time trying to protect them, which I'm grateful for, because if I wasn't around, I can't even imagine how that would have been.
So you mentioned a lot about the abuse. So let's kind of dive into that a little bit. Since you work with a lot of families and like you said, you've kind of researched it and talked with different people, what do you think it is about foster care that kind of opens that up? Like thinking about the vetting system, how do they miss that when they place kids at homes?
Well, I think one thing is they need so many. They need so
Mm-hmm.
many foster parents that they do like a basic search. They do like a basic vetting of, do you have a stable home? Meaning, do you have heat and water? And is it clean? And do you have a room and a bed and things like that? But I think it's more psychological. I don't think they're working with these families to see how they grew up. I mean, like in any
Mm-hmm.
family, how they grew up. Will there be anger? How do they manage stress? Because this is stressful, having a
Right.
child in your home. How well are they at dealing with their own stuff, that when this child is pushing because they want to see you, love them through it, they're kind of
Mm-hmm.
pushing you away to see if you'll stay. Can you love them through it? Can you
Right.
separate yourself? This isn't about you, it's about the child. This isn't about the child, it's about what happened to the child.
Mm-hmm.
Being able to psychologically remove yourself from the situation. I think a lot of people find that hard to
Right.
do.
I agree with that. I think even, with your own children, or I'm a classroom teacher, you see these things and you do have to learn not to take it personally and how to work with that child. And that can be hard. Are there usually classes to help them with that? Or back then, was that not something that was really supported?
I think they always had classes for future foster parents, but it was more, I mean, it was about, oh, you're going to have this child come in. You will be given their full medical. You will be given their full psychological. You will be given, um, their full history. However, I was always in charge of my history. So my
Mm-hmm.
social worker, who was overworked, would come to me and say, "Hey, I'm new to your case. Tell me everything." And so she would
Mm,
write everything down. And then 6 months later, I'd have a new caseworker tell me
right.
everything. So,
So a
um,
revolving door of people who didn't really know you who are trying to speak for you.
correct. Yes,
Yeah.
correct. Yeah.
Okay.
So when I would do when I would go and support Franklin County Children's Services, and they called like peer panels, and I would
Mm-hmm.
sit on a panel and let them know my experience. I could bring up some of these things maybe they didn't think about.
When you think about being that protector for your siblings, how did that weigh on you as a child yourself?
I didn't realize. I think one important thing is that when you're in survivor mode, like you're
Mm-hmm.
just trying to survive from one day to the next, and that means like it's about the basics. Like, do I have food? Will I have shelter? Will I be warm? So I don't think I was able to get out of that for most of my childhood. It was mostly, how can I make sure that I'm okay and they're okay, and that we're going to make it through today.
Right.
And because again, when you would be taken out of a home, you had no idea. It would be like, it would just be, I mean, the adults probably knew, but the children didn't. It just would be one day they were there picking me up. The police officer was there. Um, and so
Oh, so
I
there's
didn't.
no heads up that you're moving.
Oh, no,
Oh,
no,
wow.
not
Okay.
in my situation, at least,
Okay. Was
because
there,
most of them are emergent.
right. So did you kind of have like this fear of where am I going next? And then if your siblings are not with you at that home, was there that fear of who are they with? Who's protecting them? Who's looking after them?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And like one of my homes that I went to live in, which again, I'm really grateful for anybody that gives up their time and and opens their home to foster kids. Like I do appreciate that so much.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that being said, I went to live in a home on Ohio Avenue near Children's Hospital before it was really nice. And
Mm-hmm.
in that home, we had a lot of rules, but one of them was that they would make all the kids sleep in the attic and they would lock the door at night. And so there were probably 6 kids up there, and we all had our own beds, but we were just like next to each other.
Mm-hmm.
And so you would get locked in. So those kids, all they could do was use the bathroom that was in the attic, and then the bathroom toilet didn't work. And
Mm-hmm.
so those kids would still use it. And so I will never like get that smell out of my
Oh,
nose. And I think
yeah.
about those kids. So I wasn't with my siblings. I was in like this home that was, I guess, better than what I was in, but still not
Mm-hmm.
the best situation. And in that home, you know, you do deal with different personalities and different cultures, and there was abuse. They believed in physical, like if a child talked back, they got hit in the face, like, or, slapped across the mouth and stuff.
Yeah.
That's just, so it just depends on the culture, right?
Yeah.
Um, but it was pretty traumatic to get that treatment, I guess, in that
Was there
home.
anything that you like? Could you report that, or is it just like this is where I am? I just need to get through this until I get to the next place.
Well, you could report it, but then you risk them not doing anything
Mm-hmm.
and then getting in trouble with the family once the social worker left.
Okay.
You could risk being moved out of like your stability. So you're a teacher, and that was my safe haven, going to school every day. So
Mm-hmm.
if I said something and then they moved me, and now I've lost my safe place at
Okay.
school where I spent most of my time. So it just depends on how bad the abuse was. And I had reported in one of my foster homes, I did report, and they didn't take us, and they even let that family adopt kids later, so
Oh.
it's sad.
Can you think of a foster home that you actually enjoyed being at that was more of a safe haven for you?
No,
Oh.
but I can say that also being in Franklin County Children's Services, they would set you up with a big brother, big sister
Okay.
from the Big Brother, Big Sister program.
Mm-hmm.
And I was very blessed to have two different big sisters over the years.
Okay.
And the first one, she had a daughter in high school, and she would pick my sister and I up, and she lived in Gahanna. And I just remember getting to experience like what a different life could be, to go into a home where they showered regularly and brushed their teeth
Mm-hmm.
regularly. They went to the bank. They went to the grocery store. She even bought us like Breyer's ice cream. I was just amazed. She actually took us to a restaurant a couple of times. She would take us
Yeah.
to movies, things that we just never did. And then my second big sister, her name is Suzanne. We're still very close to this day, and she also had daughters, and she decided to be a big sister because her daughters would go to be with their dad over summer, and she
Mm-hmm.
missed them so much, so she took on a big little sister so that she could keep herself busy.
Okay.
And her family, she just brought me in. It was like the first time I really understood unconditional love. Like she had unconditional love for me and didn't judge me based on my past, and just brought me into her family. And in her world, like I learned what a mother was like with her kids, like because I got to see her kids grow up. And then she was the first person that ever took me to a mall. I had never seen a mall before. She just gave me like a different perspective as well on what family could look like and be.
Yeah. Well, thank God for her. That sounds like
Right?
the bright stars in your life. I could see like you're lighting up and smiling just talking about that experience.
Yeah,
When you
she was
talked
amazing.
about people not judging you for your past, did you find it hard? Because, like you said, this was 30 years ago. Were kids judgmental, like, oh, you're in foster care, or you're not with your parents? Did people around you know that that was what your life was like?
I definitely think people knew. But again, when you're in survivor mode, you have no idea like what anybody else thinks. You don't even care. Um, so when I was in elementary school, I had a teacher that would bring me clothes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I was in first grade and I didn't have a winter coat. I didn't have boots. I had a windbreaker. I had pants that were like a size too small. I had shoes that were two sizes too small. And I couldn't go outside for recess. So she
Mm-hmm.
would have me stay with her during recess and she would like tutor me in math because my car never moved on the bulletin board.
Aw.
So she would tutor me in class and she brought me in some knee socks and some strawberry shortcake tennis shoes that were
Aw.
used for her daughter. And I just thought, I just couldn't believe it.
Mm-hmm.
And that winter, I didn't get a coat. I remember shopping for one. It was too expensive, so I didn't get a coat. But then I think the next year we found out about Salvation Army, and so I was able to get a coat the years after that through them. But yeah, so she knew I had struggles at home. Um, You don't really notice it until you become like a teenager and you're not really fitting in. Most of the people that I grew up with, we were kind of all in the same boat though, which was nice. Just economically on the poorer side.
Mm-hmm.
So you didn't notice it as much, I mean, but uh, it was definitely evident. So,
Okay.
um, and then I don't know if you remember this at all, but uh, Channel 6 used to do Wednesday's Child. It's a program where they would have a kid or sibling group come on the news on a Wednesday night and they would take them to do something really fun and kind of showcase them as a child that was up for adoption.
Okay.
And they would play it on the evening news. And then anybody who was wanted to adopt that sibling group or that child could call in. And so they had my sister and I on there when I was in 8th grade
Mm-hmm.
to see if they could get anybody who would want to adopt us. And so that I think's when my peers really knew like
Okay.
that I was in foster care and I was up for adoption.
What did they say to you?
They were actually really nice because
Good.
yeah, when I did that program, they already knew who was going to adopt us. And that's a special story, but they already knew the family that was going to adopt my sister and I.
Mm-hmm.
So, so when you do get adopted, you get like a book to introduce you to the home and the family. And I was able to bring that to school and share it with all my friends. And
Nice.
I'm still friends with some of the girls from then to this day. So,
Okay. So tell us about your adoption. You said it's a special story. I'm excited to hear it.
yeah. So, I'm a firm believer that all things, happen. I don't know if it's necessarily for a reason, but I do feel like all things work out. And in this particular situation, before we were adopted, my sister and I and my brother, we went to live with their biological father. And he had recently just gotten married. And I thought, oh my gosh, he's going to just got married. He's going to take on 3 kids and he's never raised any of us before. So, um, but he gave it a shot. Well, the church that he got married in was in Columbus.
Mm-hmm.
And they got married. My sister and my brother were in the wedding. I was just at the wedding. And then fast forward, we went to live with them. They ended up not working out. That's when we went into our last foster home to be put up for adoption. That's when the bargain happened.
Mm-hmm.
And my brother's mom, the family that ended up taking my brother, they went to church and they were like, we'll take the girls. Well, my sister and I ended up in the same foster home and they would be like, oh, we'll take the girls every Sunday, bring them to church and then go to lunch so that way you can have a break and then all the kids can be together.
Mm-hmm.
And that family would take us to church. Well, the church we went to was the same church that my step parents got married in.
Okay.
And so we ended up being a part of that church for a long time. And uh, then when we got put up for adoption, the minister of the church wanted to adopt my sister. So then the other minister of the church adopted me.
Okay.
And then my brother was adopted in the congregation.
Wow. So were
So
those families close? So you still got to see each other a lot then?
we did. So my family and my sister's family, they were very, very close. My sister's family, they were much younger than my parents who adopted me. My dad was the
Mm-hmm.
senior pastor, and her dad was like the new young pastor. And so, yeah, so we would do Sunday dinners all the time, which really meant a lot to me. Part of the adoption, well, even part of going into a foster home, being a teenager, they weren't able to place me in a home
Mm-hmm.
because the older you are in foster care, then the more
The harder.
risky you are in
Yeah.
terms of what you've experienced, the trauma you've experienced. You might have some emotional baggage. You might, uh, you know, have mental disabilities. You just never knew. So a lot of families don't want to take on teenagers. So when my sister's foster mom heard that I was going to have to probably go to a group home, which I had
Mm-hmm.
prayed to never have to go to, she decided she would take me in. And so it was a lot of stress for her to have, she was a single parent to have two kids.
Yeah.
So it was really helpful that my brother's family would pick us up and take us to church.
Had you started to give up hope, like knowing that you're getting to a certain age? Did you assume that no one would adopt you?
Yes, there was a chance of that for sure. I mean, and it's sad. There are a lot of kids that are emancipated out right now.
Mm-hmm.
And, I try my best to support all of them
Yeah.
through
I
the
know you said when
organizations.
you're in survival mode, right? You're just living day by day, just kind of moving forward. It just is what it is. Is adoption, is that family idea in the back of your head? Are you hoping that, the next home will be better? Are you hoping that somebody will take you in permanently? Or is it, like you said, you're just living and you don't really think about those things?
No, and you probably know this from having my son Jack in class. Like I would get in my head and I would daydream. And so like
Mm-hmm.
one of the times I would do that is if I was on the bus and I would have like a bus ride, and my bus ride required me to have to go on the highway or even
Okay.
in the taxi cab. And I would just watch all of these neighborhoods go by. And, so you've got, you'll pass like a nice neighborhood and then maybe a lower income neighborhood. And I just remember like always daydreaming about what that house was like, what it would be like to
Mm-hmm.
live there, and what it would be like to have a loving family. And I also spent a lot of time daydreaming about what it would be like if my mom had it together, if she had
Yeah.
support, like the right kind of support, or what it would be like to grow up in a family where I could have like a real personality. Like I could just live for me. I could just be me. I didn't have to be all these other roles. I could just be a teenager, basically. And then when I was adopted, my parents, it was actually probably the hardest thing I ever went through being adopted because it really does change your whole life. And I was separated from my siblings when I got adopted. I couldn't be with my sister because I was her mom, and that would affect her bonding with her family. So they made sure we were in separate families, and it was the hardest thing, not being able to watch her grow up, really. I wasn't allowed to babysit her. I wasn't allowed to write her letters or call her unless I called their other kids. Yeah, it was just really hard. But anyway, my parents would tell me, you need to be a teenager. And I was like, I don't
Mm-hmm.
even know what that means. Like, what does that mean? And I would
Right.
watch the girls in high school. So I went from very lower class, poor to middle class. And I did not fit in. Like the way that I spoke, the way my education was,
Mm-hmm.
the way that I dressed, like I was not I was not comfortable. But that was my freshman year. And by the time I got to senior year, I had acclimated pretty well.
Okay.
And that's when I first realized that I could actually go to college.
What was life at home like? How did you bond with your adopted parents?
My bonding with my parents was a little bit rough. They had two daughters before me. They had a daughter who was married and out of the house living in Indiana, who was 12 years older than me. And then they had
Okay.
a daughter who was living with them when I moved in, who was 10 years older than me, and she was still in college. And I just remember my middle sister really struggling with me being adopted, even though my parents had talked with them and they said they were fine with that,
Mm-hmm.
they wanted to do it. And I believe that she really wanted to. I just think she didn't realize what a shift that was. She went from being the baby now to the middle.
Yeah.
And it does make a difference.
Yeah.
And I went from being the oldest to the baby
Mm-hmm.
in my family unit. So I just think that my parents felt bad when they realized how hard it was for her. Now she would deny that today, but I don't. I just feel like as I look at our lives, yes, I feel like it did affect her a lot. Obviously, it's been 34 years now, so we
Mm-hmm.
have grown to have a relationship. I just think it was really hard for me with my parents. I think they were very judgmental, and so they kind of judged me from the beginning. I think based on my conversations with my dad that he
Mm-hmm.
he thought I was like my bio mom, which wasn't true, but I think that's what I would tell people who were adopting, like get to know the child, ask them
Mm-hmm.
questions, get to know what their experience was like. Don't just believe the psychological that you get because it's not
Right.
fair, right? That psychological is coming from a place that's, where they're in survival mode. You're going to do
Mm-hmm.
anything you can to survive, and anything that you do during survival mode shouldn't be held against you,
Right.
in my opinion. And so my parents, I think that they just wanted to adopt me because I was so well adjusted and just move on. It was like they didn't want to address everything that came with
Everything that,
me.
yeah. So
Yeah,
it's like, oh, you're in this new happy situation. You should be fine now. Let's have this happy life together.
right. And it
Yeah.
doesn't work that way. And I
No.
feel like what I try to tell families too is that chaos and drama can be addicting.
Mm-hmm.
It can feel like the normal, and so when you're taken out of that situation you feel like something's wrong. Like, what's
Yeah.
wrong? Nobody's yelling today, nobody's screaming. I remember I would come home from school and my dad would say, well, how was your day? And I say, oh, it's good. And then my mom would come home and she would say, well, how was your day? And I'd be like, can't you guys just wait until dinner time and ask me at the same time? It was so weird to me.
Yeah.
And so we kind of laughed about that, but it just is all such an adjustment. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
So that was your freshman year, and you said it kind of took you those 4 years to acclimate. What happened? Was it just learning how to have those conversations? Were your parents slowly less judgmental? What made things kind of settle for you?
Um, I think I just realized that we were not going to talk about the past.
Okay.
And so we had like a moment at the 2-year mark. And I also try to tell that to families. Like, it's so important that you try to have unconditional love for the child, so they're not thinking that this is going to change. So my trigger mark was 2 years. I
Okay.
didn't stay any place longer than 2 years. And so when we got to the 2-year mark in my family, I remember, I don't know what happened. I don't even know, but my dad was like, well, if you're not happy, we'll send you back.
Oh,
And he was going to send me back into foster care. And I thought I was a good kid. Like, I
yeah.
didn't sneak out. I didn't do drugs. I didn't go to parties. Like, I really tried hard to study. Like, I was like trying to be the perfect child, because if I was perfect, they would love me. So I was like, I don't understand. But I think it was just really hard being away from my siblings, not being able to just be who I was.
Mm-hmm.
I was ridiculed by like the way that I talked and the way that I did my hair, um and that, I don't know. I think my dad really judged me. He was a Lutheran minister, and he just always thought, I really don't know what he thought. I mean, I've been accused of doing drugs in my life. I've never done drugs. I've been accused of having an eating disorder. I never did that. But they just like they never believed me. And even in college, I had a boyfriend, and we had this situation where we were fishing, and he went to catch the fish and he hit me with his elbow in the eye, and I got a black eye. My
Mm-hmm.
parents thought he hurt me and that I was protecting him. They didn't believe me ever. And that
Mm.
was just so hurtful. So I think it definitely affected our bonding
Yeah.
over the years. And then as I had my own son, my sister, the middle, the youngest, she had her son at the same time, and so they pretty much chose their kids
Oh.
over Jack and I. And um,
So did you
they're
ever
just,
feel like you were actually part of the family or just almost like a person living in their home?
yeah, I just felt like they provided for my things.
Okay.
And so that led to several conversations over the years of, I don't want just a holiday family.
Mm-hmm.
I want a family that wants to be a part of my life every day, not just
Right.
on Mother's Day or Christmas. And they didn't really understand that. I think they pushed a lot back on me. But again, I thought, you're the parents,
Right.
and even now as an adult, I know, like, that's my job.
Mm-hmm.
That's not my kid's job. But they the other thing that was really hard is when I turned 18, my bio mom came to find me because she had to wait until I was 18. And I remember calling them and saying, she stopped by my work today and she's going to bring my little brother and I want to see him so bad because, again, I had
Yeah.
raised him and I was so excited. And my parents were very upset and they were like, we'll talk about this when you get home. And so when I got home, it was summer after I graduated, and they were
Mm-hmm.
like, you need to choose tonight. Do you want to be with your mom or do you want to go to college? You
Wow.
can't have both. And I just remember thinking that was, again, one of those moments where it was like, all I wanted you to do was like be with me to ask her questions. Like, I want
Yes.
to, like, now I'm not in survival mode. So now I want to know, what's my health history? Tell me about my birth. Tell me about, because those are things you don't think to ask. But
Right.
they were not going to have it. And I wanted to go to college. So
Mm-hmm.
I didn't talk to her.
Oh.
And again, I think that affected our bonding.
Right.
And then, as they aged, like, I have always felt indebted to them.
Mm-hmm.
They changed my life, getting me out of that situation. I got to go to college. I became a nurse. Um, it was all so special to me that when they were aging, I didn't skip a beat to take care of them. And my
Yeah.
sisters all both live out of state. And I know it's probably not what they would have wanted. They probably would have rather have had their daughters take care of them.
Mm-hmm.
But I took care of them, and actually, because I took care of them, it really helped our relationship those last 2 years that I cared for
Okay.
them. My dad, you know, he he finally was just like, you've done a good job. And then, but he still felt very bad for my sisters that they adopted me and changed their lives. He wanted to make sure
Mm-hmm.
they were okay. Um, but in the end, I think, it was helpful
Yeah.
to have had that time with them.
Do you remember having like a certain feeling, like a kind of almost a release when he told you, you know, you're doing great?
No, because I didn't take his words to heart anymore. I
Okay.
didn't
You
need
weren't
it.
looking for
Yeah,
that from him.
not at all. Because again, I show up in the world for what makes me feel good. So
Mm-hmm.
showing up for them was all about how I could show up in the world to make myself feel good, to help them. It wasn't about guilt. It wasn't about helping them per se, but it was like, I will show up in my values and my character
Mm-hmm.
and support you.
So with the trauma with your mother being in the foster care system with the different abusive families and then having this adoptive family that didn't truly bring you into their family, how did you find your own morals and values? How were you able to maintain hope and character? How did you heal from the past?
I think I think I wanted to prove my dad wrong. And I
Mm-hmm.
feel like from the moment I lived with him, I was kind of judged into, they were just waiting for me to mess up or, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
you name it. I was just wait. I mean, I think they were waiting for me to become a teen mom or to become addicted to drugs or um, like be a college dropout. And so I just was determined I was not going to fall into any of that, any of those scenarios. And I also was determined I wasn't going to be like my bio mom. I could
Mm-hmm.
see the hardship she went through, and I knew what drugs would do to you. So I never wanted to do drugs, and I never wanted to smoke, and I never wanted to drink. And
Yeah.
that made me pretty driven to have a better life. And I
Yeah.
also didn't ever like limit myself either based on my bio mom. So she dropped out of middle school. And I never once told myself, well, because she didn't go to school, then you're not going to go to school. Or because she
Right.
wasn't good in math, then you won't be good in math. I kind of just adopted this idea of like, I can do anything I put my mind
Mm-hmm.
to. And I think I've always just done that.
Just had that in you.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah. Well, again, coming with survivorship comes
Right.
things like codependency. Like I had to
Mm-hmm.
learn how to not be codependent. And it wasn't necessarily like anybody in particular I was codependent about, but it was
Mm-hmm.
just like I almost needed permission to do something. And
Yeah.
then I had to go through a lot of therapy to kind of get through that. Like
Okay.
I don't need permission. I can have my own personality. Who am I? When you're in foster care, nobody asks you what kind of cereal you like. Nobody
Mm-hmm.
asks you what kind of food you like, what kind of clothes you like, what's your favorite color. Nobody asks you. You get what you get. Um, and so I once I graduated college, I really had to take time to really learn who I was and what I liked. And I mean, it was hard, but it
Mm-hmm.
was also very rewarding. So
How was your bio mom? Was she able to get away from drugs and turn her life around as well?
she was not,
Okay.
she, um, she was not able to get it together. And I would often just think, like, how could she? She's lost everything.
Mm-hmm.
I can't imagine the emotional pain that was to go through. And once you're already addicted, you have to have a reason greater than yourself to stop. And I just don't think she ever had a reason greater than herself to stop. The drugs were way more powerful than us.
How was your little brother that ended up staying with her?
He ended up in juvenile detention for the
Okay.
last year and a half of his high school career. So he got his GED, and then he
Mm-hmm.
went on to like actually hold like a job.
Okay.
My brother, who got adopted by the family in the congregation, he ended up struggling with like ADHD and different things. And he dropped out of high school and left his family and went to live with his bio dad.
Okay.
And then my sister, her family, they moved her to California. And she went from middle child to oldest. So she
Mm-hmm.
ended up with three siblings under her. And so she did pretty well for herself. She went to college and now she's a, master's level educator and on the school board, she's doing really
Okay.
well. So
Do you all still talk and see each other?
we don't actually. I had to learn as I got older that my sister wasn't my child
Mm-hmm.
still. And so when I would see her, I would remember, like, I imagine it's like when I see my son Jack, I would see her as a little girl and then her as an adult. And her family would be like, you don't have to take care of her. And I'm like, I know, but it's so weird. I feel like her kids are my grandkids. It's like, so I really had to kind of back off from that. And so in that, she's made some choices that we probably don't see eye to eye on. And I think I was too motherly towards her and she shut me out. So we do not talk anymore. And then my brothers, they just don't live the lifestyle that I want to be surrounded by. And though I love them and would do like anything to support them, but at a distance because it's too close for comfort. And I do think they both struggle with drugs. Maybe not, maybe just marijuana for one of
Mm-hmm.
them. I don't really know the other, but even that's too much for me.
I'm sure with the experiences that you've had, you just want to stay away from that and not be a part of that world.
Absolutely.
So, thinking about today, now with your own son, because you've talked about Jack a lot, and I know you, as you talked about, I was Jack's teacher in fourth grade. And just seeing you with him and the conversations that you and I have had, you are such a loving and caring mom, a sweet and caring person in general. So, kind of taking all of that that's happened, how do you mother your actual child? And then also, you have bonus children, as you call them now, too. How, and like I said, I've seen your pictures on Facebook and your stories. Like, you're so fun and caring, and there's no distinction of like, that's not my kid, and that's where you came from. So, how do you love now?
I mean, I think it all comes down to unconditional love,
Mm-hmm.
and I can't not look at my son and just have that. And I'm just so honored to be his mom and to be in his life, and I recognize how important that role is. And it was my, like, once I knew I was pregnant, it was like my favorite thing to do. Unfortunately, I ended up divorced,
Mm-hmm.
which again really kind of shook my world a little bit. I didn't think people got divorced because I wasn't really around people that got married.
Yeah.
Most people in my world, they didn't get married.
Yeah.
And so when his dad and I separated, um, I became a single parent, and I thought, oh my
Mm-hmm.
gosh, like it just, so I went through all of those grieving points as a single mom, like sitting on the floor in kindergarten. And I was like, well, nobody ever did this for me. And I would think about it for him. And I think that really shaped the kind of mom that I was. Like, I not
Mm-hmm.
only parented him, but I also parented myself at the same time. And then when he was 3, I met my husband, and he has 3 kids. And they were 6, well, just turned 6, 4, and 3 as well. So the
Mm-hmm.
boys were 3, and they kind of grew up together. And when we were deciding, will we have kids? Like, I told my husband, I can't imagine Jack leaving me at any time during the week or on the weekend to go be with his
Yeah.
dad. And I had a child that stayed with me all the time. That just didn't feel right to me. I always wanted Jack to know, like, this is your home when you're home. And I also
Mm-hmm.
wanted Chris's kids, when they would come, that this is their home. Like, there's no other child to interfere. And I also think it was important for Chris and I to bond on those times that we didn't have the kids. Like,
Mm-hmm.
we could have our relationship, that because having a family takes a lot away from the main
The
unit.
couple. Yeah.
Yeah. So we decided not to have kids, and I think it worked out really well. Our kids always know that this is their home.
Have you shared a lot of your story with them as well?
I have a little bit. I think they know about all the things I've been involved with since I've become an adult. So
Mm-hmm.
they've been a part of that, and they'll ask questions, because my idea is I would never want them to experience anything I've ever been through.
Mm-hmm.
I I would want to shelter them from that. I mean, I think the world can be hard, and so growing up doesn't have to be. And so I think they've gotten the benefit of that.
So tell us about how you're supporting other kids now who are in the system.
Yeah, so I started out with an organization called Just Choice. It's through Molly Ramp Thomas. She's the founder, and she has an all options parenting platform.
Mm-hmm.
And she not only is an adoption agency, she also supports mothers through decisions of giving their child up for adoption, parenting and getting support, or even abortion services. Like, she'll provide support for all of those things, and
Okay.
keeping that woman, and her choice is important. And I feel like that's where it starts. If the mother can feel good about it, I just think it leads to, like, positive outcomes in the end. And of course, she would like to see moms do adoption or
Mm-hmm.
parent themselves, and so she works really hard to make that happen for families. And so I asked her today, like, is there anything, that is special that you would like me to say? And her big thing is empowering these moms, but also bringing kids out of poverty and neglect. And
Yeah.
it helps our communities if we can support not only the kids but the families that are
Yes.
caring for the kids. So I love that about Molly and her organization. She's grown it to two different locations. She's always looking for, I mean, it is a nonprofit, so she's always looking for support because she
Mm-hmm.
provides diapers and clothes and blankets. And she just told me a
Mm-hmm.
story today about a mom who was in foster care who got pregnant, and she was actually living in a group home, and she was taken to the hospital to have her baby alone.
Mm.
And Franklin County Children's Services immediately took the baby because she can't have that baby in her group home. They
Oh,
took the baby, they took her back to her group home in her hospital gown and dropped
wow.
her off.
And just
And
have a nice
isn't that
life.
heartbreaking?
Wow. Yeah.
So Molly said that she would like to host the baby so that she
Mm-hmm.
could work with her resources to get the mom support that she needs so that she can raise her baby.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's heartbreaking that
Yes.
this is still happening in our community.
Right. And nobody talks about it, right? Like we
No.
just, we could be walking past that girl and not know what she's going through. But,
Right.
if she gives us a side eye or something, we just want to label her as rude and not caring, but you don't know what she's going through in her life right now. And it's
Right.
just,
And not to sound cliche, but Oprah was right. It's not what's wrong with you.
mm-hmm.
It's what happened to you,
Yeah.
because that's what's affecting our communities.
I don't know if you would know the stats on this, but as people coming out of foster care, is it true like they have that higher rate of not being able to go to college or succeed and things like that, right?
Absolutely. So the other organization that I work with is the Mirth Project, and they focus on teens in the community, not just
Mm-hmm.
foster kids, but teens in the community. But then they also focus on emancipated teens that the government will offer an apartment to called Scholar House,
Okay.
and they're only allowed to live there if they're in college. And so they leave foster care sometimes at 17, maybe even 18. They move in here, and when they move in, they don't have anything. They're expected to work a job and go to school full time and pay rent
Oh.
and provide for themselves. And a lot of them, again, are surviving. They don't they
Mm-hmm.
don't know how to they don't know how to do anything.
Right.
They don't even know what a meal is. You know what I mean? They're
Mm-hmm.
like used to going to the convenience store and having chips
Right.
or soda or fast food, because a McDonald's hamburger is $1.
Mm-hmm.
It's heartbreaking. So Robin she has this also nonprofit organization where she offers support to the Scholar House kids, if that means um, like one of them can't pay their rent, she'll cover their rent for that month until they get back on their feet. Or if they're in school and they need supplies for school, like college, like they need a computer or they need
Mm-hmm.
pens or they need paper. She also provides meals for them in their pantry because, again, if you're hungry, you can't study and concentrate. So she makes sure that even
Right.
if they don't have a real meal, they've got food always in the pantry.
Mm-hmm.
So she does that program. And then at Christmas, she does, she adopts teens because, again, there's so many programs for toddlers, and toddler toys
Mm-hmm.
are pretty cheap, like kids,
Right.
kids for tots or tots for kids or whatever. Those programs, they provide countless outfits and toys because they're pretty cheap. But when you get to a teenager, they're wanting to fit in. They're
Right.
wanting to assimilate into a group. And so they're wanting a pair of Jordans,
Mm-hmm.
but when you're in foster care, you get a catalog and you get to pick one thing out of the catalog, and it can't be more than now it might be $75, but when I was in, I couldn't pick anything more than $25. So I got a sewing kit, and I still have it. Actually, I still have it after all that time, but that was what I got as a teenager. Because the catalog didn't have, it didn't have much in it. It was like I don't know. It was just like a bland catalog that you got to choose one gift out of, and that was my Christmas. So she has taken that to the next level where you can adopt a teenager for Christmas and provide them with the things they need and want. So they might need a coat and they might need sheets and they might need towels and washcloths, but they also might want a pair of Jordans, or they might want a calculator, they might want a computer, or what they need for school.
You posted about the Mirth Project on your Facebook, and I looked it up and I was reading through that, and it broke my heart. Like, she shared one story about a teenager who's like, I just want a towel that's mine. Like, things
Yeah.
that we wouldn't think about, right? Like, I know foster care exists. I know that kids are in foster care home, but I wouldn't think like these are the family towels and you don't have one, right? That's not something that is
Right.
talked about in our community or our world. Or, like you said, just a pillow for themselves, or that they can take with them when they go to a different location. I just would have assumed that that would have been provided. Those are simple staples that, most homes have. So it's heartbreaking to know that these teenagers don't have that, and they're seeing everybody with it, and they just want something that's their own.
Yes. And, one thing that we skipped over, in foster care, they will offer you like a stipend. So if, like, in my homes, I would go with nothing, or
Mm-hmm.
I would have a trash bag full of things. And my trash bag full of things would be dumped out in the middle of the living room, and then it would be picked through and thrown away, anything that wasn't worth keeping, in their opinion. And
Mm-hmm.
so you would end up with, I mean, you don't know. I mean, there could be bed bugs, there could be dirt. You don't know what you're
Yeah.
bringing into your home. They could have come from a home that had bugs and roaches and things. So you do have to be careful as a foster family, but at the same time, it can be absolutely humiliating.
Right.
And so they will give you a stipend, but in my homes, that stipend was used for their kids.
Oh,
And then
wow.
we got the hand me downs.
Yeah.
And so sometimes they didn't fit, or I mean, again, I probably have like a worst case scenario. At least I hope mine's the worst case scenario, but that was my experience,
Yeah.
that my clothes were the hand me downs, and they weren't, um, they weren't everything that you would need. Definitely not everything you would need to be a little girl who wanted to feel pretty and feminine,
Mm-hmm.
and that kind of thing. And then also, sometimes your clothes didn't get cleaned. I mean, laundry detergent's expensive,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of these families. But speaking from my own family, my bio mom, she was stuck at an age of like 15 or 16. I think getting pregnant at such a young age kind of psychologically stunted her. So
Mm-hmm.
even as a grown woman, she still acted like a teenager. So she didn't want to do dishes. She didn't like her time, she wanted it to be her time. And it's
Right.
just really interesting now, now as an adult, I look back on it, like how dirty the house was and how she didn't have pride in those things.
Mm-hmm.
Again, because she was an eternal teenager.
Do the organizations that you work with provide either counseling or support for those kids to help them think about going into the adult life or adult world?
Yeah, and I'm gonna read what Robin wrote because it was actually really great. She said, right now they're kind of focusing on their capital campaign, and they're working to raise money for their model program, which is the Scholar House 3, which includes trauma therapy, career counseling, anger management coaching, and some life skills training college,
Okay.
they call it, where
Yeah.
they teach them, how to grocery shop and how to use coupons and how to cook, and again, the trauma is so important, which is a whole nother side of why I became a nurse,
Mm-hmm.
because if like to be trauma informed when you're dealing with people, it means like you want to know what their ACE score is, which is, um, you know, I don't know. Do you know what the ACE score is?
Mm-mm.
It's the adverse effects for childhood experience. So
Okay.
it's like from 1 to 10, and anything above 4 is considered high. So
Okay.
like my A score is a 10. And
Wow.
so the things they're asking are Did you grow up with people yelling? Did you grow up being hit when you were little? Did you grow up with drug addiction? Did you, so they ask you all these questions. And as
Mm-hmm.
you go through, the higher your ACE score is, then the higher risks you are for all things, like higher
Mm-hmm.
risk for insulin resistance and diabetes as you age, because that means your cortisol level was high. That means that hormone has affected your pancreas and your insulin levels. And as you age, your pancreas is tired now,
Mm-hmm.
and they end up having higher risk for diabetes, higher heart disease, higher cholesterol, higher mental health issues, higher autoimmune, increased risk for incarceration, homelessness. The list is
Just
crazy.
goes on, yeah.
Yeah. So Robin is, and I think Molly does too. Both their organizations really try to help inform people of, okay, now you've been through this,
Mm-hmm.
we can support you, and you've got to take care of yourself, and you're worth it.
Right. What is
Yeah.
one of your favorite things supporting these either organizations or the people going through the system?
I think it's seeing them realize you are not the sum of your past,
Mm-hmm.
and you can create your own path. It doesn't have to be, well, because of this, or because my family was horrible with anger doesn't mean I have to be that way. You can
Right.
separate yourself. And also just them realizing that blood relatives are important, but you can also have non-blood people that you can consider relatives that maybe are even a more special relationship. So it doesn't blood doesn't make it or break it.
Mm-hmm.
I just think that we do have some very lovely people in our community that want to offer support, and it is out there. It's not the easiest to find. I'm hoping that changes, especially as the drug epidemic is still happening. And again, a lot of our families are broken. And so, and with the technology world, I'm hoping an app comes out that people can use for resources. And I think with the digital age, it is a lot easier to find support, because you could just Google anything. But
Right.
I feel like it's coming. I think that the support is there, and I would hope anybody would take the time to look and not feel shameful about it.
Yeah. I know that's huge. I think a lot of times we get nervous as just people, right, to ask for help or to say that we need something. Or, like you said, you're in survival mode and you're not even thinking about what you need, but it's
It takes
important.
vulnerability,
Yes,
and that's hard.
right. And it's okay to understand some things you just can't do on your own. We need other
Right.
people. Well, I want to thank
Yeah.
you for sharing your story. And at the end, I always like to ask people from your story, from everything that you've shared, what is the biggest takeaway that you want people to have?
I think it's exactly what you already touched on, but it's everybody has a story,
Mm-hmm.
and to come at it with positive regard, come at all people with positive regard, and not just assume things, not just judge, but to realize the question isn't what is wrong with you. The question is what happened to you, and how can we have empathy and support and unconditional love, because we're all humans. We
Mm-hmm.
all have something. And I think that would be my biggest thing: come from love, lead with love.
Thank you, Buneka. Thank you for sharing your story and through you, the stories of so many children who have walked a path like yours. I was deeply saddened by what Buneka endured, but I'm inspired by her story of strength and resilience. To see her with her son, to see her as a friend, to see the light that she carries, it's powerful. And it's a light that could have been dimmed or lost if not for her own desire for something better and for the people who planted seeds of love in her life just when she needed them the most. When asked, how do we rise? She boiled it down to lead with love. Throughout our conversation, she spoke about unconditional love again and again. And that's not something we usually think about offering to people outside of our families, right? But what if we could? What if we did? What if we tried? What if we showed unconditional love to our neighbors, to a stranger, to the man on the corner. Really take time to think about that. Could that change somebody's life? In the show notes, I've linked the organizations Buneka mentioned for anyone who wants to support them. We're in Ohio, but if you'd like to support foster teens in your own area, I encourage you to take a little time this week and see what organizations near you could use your help. And if you know of one already, head over to Instagram at Where We Rise Pod and drop the name and the state under this episode's art so we can help others find those organizations as well. I hate that Buneka experienced pain and abuse in the system. And as she said, not every situation is like hers. There are wonderful foster families out there, but there are many children who aren't as lucky and they need us. They need support, they need advocacy, and they need love. Remember, we often have patience for that hurting child, but hurting children grow into hurting adults who still need compassion. You never know someone's story unless you ask. So be brave enough to ask and listen, or simply offer love and kindness to everyone, even when it doesn't seem easy or convenient. Sometimes that small act is the very thing that helps someone rise. Thank you so much for joining me this week. I hope this episode leaves you with a lot to reflect on and to talk about with a friend. I'll meet you back here next time. See you, bye.